Princess Sephora stood alone on the balcony of her father's palace, watching the stars above the crystal city. At 3 feet tall, she was the smallest Vorthok anyone had ever seen. Her people were giants, standing 8 to 10 feet high, with bodies made of living crystal that glowed with inner fire. But Zephora's crystal skin was pale and dim, and her tiny frame made her look like a child next to the towering warriors of her race. Today marked the 5th rejection this month. Prince Korthok of the Draconian Empire had taken one look at her and laughed. This tiny thing is supposed to be a princess? She would break if I touched her. The prince had turned to her father, Emperor Vorthok, with disgust in his red eyes. Find me a real mate, not this broken doll. The Emperor's crystal face had darkened with shame. Prince Korthok, surely you can see past her size. She is brilliant, skilled in the arts of science and engineering. I need a wife who can bear strong children and fight beside me in battle. Korthok had replied, his voice booming through the throne room. This fragile creature would die in her first fight. No thank you. Sephora had watched the whole scene from behind a pillar, her heart breaking a little more with each cruel word. She had heard it all before. The aquatic lords of Neptune called her a genetic mistake. The Cerebroid Empire's greatest minds declared her intellectually inferior due to her defective size. The insectoid hive queens buzzed that she was unfit for reproduction. Every major race in the galaxy had sent suitors to court her. Every single one had rejected her within minutes of meeting her. Some were polite about it, others were cruel. But the result was always the same. Princess Sephora was unwanted. Her father entered the balcony, his heavy crystal steps echoing in the night air. Daughter, you must try harder. Smile more. Show them your knowledge of star charts and engineering. I have tried, father, Sephora said softly, not turning around. They do not care about my mind. See only my size and decide I am worthless. You are not worthless, the Emperor said, though his voice lacked conviction. You are different. Perhaps that is not always bad. Sephora finally turned to face her father. You are ashamed of me. I can see it in your eyes. We wish I had been born normal like my sisters. The Emperor's crystal face flickered with inner light, a sign of his discomfort. Your sisters are married 2 powerful alien princes. They have brought our empire strong alliances. You? But embarrassment, Sephora finished. I know. The next morning brought news that made Zephora's heart sink further. The Galactic Council had arranged for one final round of suitors. If none of them accepted her, the Emperor would have to declare her unmarriageable. This would mean shame for the entire Vorthok race, as they would be seen as unable to produce worthy mates for galactic alliances. The first suitor arrived at noon. General Thrak of the warrior clans stomped into the throne room wearing full battle armor. His forearms carried weapons that gleamed in the crystal light. He was 12 feet tall and built like a mountain of muscle and bone. Where is this princess I am supposed to consider? He growled, his voice like grinding stone. Sephora stepped forward from behind her father's throne. General Thrak looked down at her and snorted. This is a joke. I could step on her by accident. My people need a mate who can lead armies and crush enemies. This little thing would be lost in a crowd of my soldiers. He turned and left without another word. The second suitor was Prince Zix of the Tech Empire. His robotic body gleamed with advanced technology, and his computer brain calculated 1,000 possibilities every second. He scanned Sephora with his electronic eyes and processed her genetic data in moments. Calculation complete, he announced in his mechanical voice. Subject is 67% smaller than optimal breeding parameters. Probability of successful offspring, 0.03%. Recommendation: rejection. The third suitor was Lord Aquarius from the Water Worlds. His blue skin glistened with moisture, and his gills fluttered as he breathed. He took one look at Sephora and shook his head. My people need strong swimmers who can dive to the deepest ocean trenches. This tiny creature would drown in shallow water. I cannot waste my time here. By evening, 12 suitors had come and gone. 12 rejections. Sephora sat in her room, staring at her reflection in the crystal mirror. Her pale skin seemed even, dimmer than usual, and her small frame looked fragile and broken. A knock at her door interrupted her thoughts. Princess, There is one more delegation arriving tonight, her servant announced. They are from a young race called humans. They have requested an audience. Zephyra sighed, another rejection to add to the list. Very well, tell them I will meet them in the morning. Actually, Princess, they are already here. Their ship arrived faster than expected. Zephyra dragged herself to the throne room, expecting to face another giant warrior or cold calculating prince. Instead, she found herself looking at a creature unlike any she had ever seen. The human male stood about 6 feet tall, with tan skin and brown hair. His body was neither crystal, nor metal, nor scales, but soft flesh that seemed somehow warm and alive. Your Majesty, the human said, bowing to her father, I am Captain Jake Morrison of the Earth Federation. We are honored to meet with your royal family. Then he turned to Zephyra, and something impossible happened. Instead of looking down at her with disgust or pity, he smiled. It was a genuine smile that reached his eyes and made them crinkle at the corners. And you must be Princess Zephyra, Jake said, offering her a small bow. I have heard much about your work in terraforming technology. I would very much like to discuss it with you if you have time. Zephyra stared at him in shock. He knew about her scientific work. He wanted to discuss it. No suitor had ever cared about her mind before. For the first time in her life, Princess Zephyra felt something she had never experienced with any other male in the galaxy. Jake Morrison followed Princess Zephyra through the crystal gardens of the palace, his boots making soft sounds on the smooth pathways. The other human diplomats had stayed behind to discuss trade agreements with Emperor Vorthok, but Jake found himself more interested in the small princess who walked ahead of him. You really want to know about my terraforming research? Zephyra asked, glancing back at him with suspicious eyes. Most people think it is a waste of time. I'm not most people, Jake replied. Back on Earth, we've been trying to make dead planets livable for decades. If you found new ways to do it, I'd be crazy not to listen. Zephyra stopped beside a fountain made of singing crystal. The water sparkled as it flowed over the musical stones, creating a gentle melody. Why should I trust you? Every other male who has come here has pretended to be interested in my thoughts, only to laugh at me later. Jake sat down on the edge of the fountain, putting himself at eye level with the tiny princess. Because I'm human. We don't laugh at good ideas just because they come from someone small. Small, Zephyra repeated, her voice bitter. That is all anyone sees when they look at me, the failed princess who cannot even grow to proper size. I see someone who has survived years of rejection and still keeps working on projects that could help millions of people, Jake said. That takes real strength. Zephyra studied his face, looking for signs of mockery or pity. Instead, she found only honest interest. Slowly, she began to talk about her work. Discovered that most terraforming fails because we try to change entire planets at once, she explained, her voice growing stronger as she spoke. But what if we could change small areas first, then let them spread naturally, like planting seeds instead of trying to grow a forest overnight? Jake leaned forward. That's brilliant. We've been thinking about it all wrong. Show me your calculations. 4. The next 3 hours, Zephyra led Jake through her private laboratory. The room was filled with holographic displays showing planet models, atmospheric readings, and complex equations that floated in the air like glowing butterflies. Jake watched in amazement as the small princess manipulated the displays with quick, precise movements. Here, Zephyra said, pointing to a model of a barren world. We introduced specialized bacteria to small areas of the surface. The bacteria changed the soil chemistry, making it ready for plants. As the plants grow, they release gases that slowly change the atmosphere. Within 50 years, the whole planet becomes livable. 50 years? Jake whistled. Current methods take 300 years, and half of them fail completely. Exactly, Zephyra said, her eyes lighting up with excitement. But my people think the process is too slow. They want results in 10 years or less. They say my method is worthless because it requires patience. Jake shook his head. On Earth, we plant trees, knowing our great-grandchildren will sit in there. Shade, 50 years is nothing compared to forever. Zephyra stared at him. You really understand? I understand that you're probably the smartest person I've ever met, Jake said. Your size isn't a weakness. It's given you a different way of seeing problems. How do you mean? Jake pointed to a complex equation floating near the ceiling. You had to climb on that platform to reach those controls, right? That means you see the display from angles that taller people never experience. You notice details they miss because they're always looking down at things. Zephyra had never thought about it that way. I do see patterns that others miss. I thought it was just luck. Not luck. Perspective. Different viewpoints lead to different solutions. They spent the rest of the day working together on Zephyra's equations. Jake showed her human mathematical concepts that helped refine her calculations. Zephyra taught him about crystalline energy patterns that could power terraforming equipment for centuries. As the sun set, painting the crystal city in shades of gold and red, they sat together in the garden. Zephyra felt something she had never experienced before. She felt valued. Not as a princess or a potential mate, but as a scientist and a person. "Why are you being so kind to me?" she asked quietly. Jake was quiet for a moment. "My sister was born with a condition that made her much smaller than other humans. People used to stare at her and whisper behind her back. But she became one of the best engineers in the solar system. She taught me that size has nothing to do with worth. Where is your sister now?" "She's designing the engines for our newest exploration ships. Ships that will use your terraforming methods to make new worlds for humanity." Zephyra felt tears forming in her crystal eyes. "No one has ever spoken to me like this before. Like I matter." "You do matter," Jake said firmly. "Your ideas could change the galaxy. Any species that doesn't see that is blind." The next morning, Jake joined Zephyra for breakfast in her private dining room. The palace was buzzing with activity as various alien diplomats prepared for formal meetings. Through the crystal walls, they could see the towering forms of the rejected suitors preparing to leave. "Prince Korthok is telling everyone that humans are fools for showing interest in the defective princess," Zephyra said sadly. "He says you are either blind or desperate." Jake's jaw tightened. "Let me worry about Prince Korthok." "Ach, you do not understand," Zephyra said. "Ach, if you defend me publicly, it will cause problems for your people. The other races will think humans are weak for supporting someone like me." "Someone like you?" Jake stood up, his voice rising. "You mean someone brilliant? Someone who solved problems that have stumped the galaxy's best minds for centuries?" Before Zephyra could stop him, Jake walked out of the dining room and into the main hall where the alien delegates were gathering. Prince Korthok was in the center of a group, his forearms gesturing as he spoke. "The humans are desperate for any alliance," Korthok was saying. "That is why they pretend to value the broken princess. They know no one else will have her." "You're wrong," Jake said loudly, stepping into the circle.
Oh.
The conversation stopped as all eyes turned to him. "We value Princess Zephyra because she's remarkable. Her terraforming research is more advanced than anything your people have produced." Korthok laughed, a sound like grinding metal. "Remarkable? She is a genetic failure. It's too small, too weak, too stupid to contribute anything useful. Too stupid." Jake's voice was deadly quiet. "She's developed technology that could feed billions of people on dead worlds. What have you done lately besides wave your weapons around?" The alien delegates murmured among themselves. No one had ever challenged Prince Korthok so directly. The draconian prince's red eyes blazed with anger. "You dare insult me, human?" "I dare tell the truth," Jake replied. "Princess Zephyra is worth 10 of you." The hall erupted in shocked whispers. Emperor Vorthok rushed forward, his crystal face dark with embarrassment. "Captain Morrison, please," the Emperor said. "Prince Korthok is an honored guest." "So is your daughter," Jake said, not backing down. "Yet I don't see anyone honoring her." Korthok stepped closer, looming over Jake with his massive frame. "You have made an enemy today, human. My people will remember this insult." "Good," Jake said, "then maybe they'll remember to treat brilliant scientists with respect." As the alien delegates dispersed in confusion, Jake found Zephyra standing in the doorway. Her crystal eyes were wide with shock and something else, something that looked like admiration. "You defended me," she whispered. "No one has ever defended me before." "Get used to it," Jake said, offering her his arm. "I have a feeling this is just the beginning." The emergency meeting of the Galactic Council lasted 3 hours. Representatives from 12 different species gathered in the crystal chamber, their voices rising in heated debate. Jake Morrison sat at the human delegation table, watching Emperor Vorthok paced nervously at the center of the room. "This is unacceptable," Prince Korthok declared, his forearms crossed over his massive chest. "The human has insulted the dignity of the Draconian Empire. We demand he be removed from this planet immediately." The human spoke out of turn, agreed Ambassador Zix, his robotic voice echoing through the chamber. Such emotional outbursts show why their species is not ready for galactic society. Jake stood up slowly. "I spoke the truth. Princess Sephora is a brilliant scientist whose work could benefit every world in this galaxy. If that's insulting to you, maybe you need to examine your own values." "Enough," Emperor Vorthok said, his crystal face flickering with stress. "Captain Morrison, you have caused great embarrassment to my family. Must ask you and your delegation to leave our world." Jake's fellow humans looked uncomfortable. "Ambassador." Collins leaned over and whispered, "Jake, we can't afford to lose this alliance. The Vorthok control 3 major trade routes." "Some things are more important than trade routes," Jake replied, loud enough for the entire chamber to hear. "Such as what?" Lord Aquarius asked, his blue skin glistening with moisture. Jake took a deep breath. "Such as doing what's right. Princess Zephyra has been rejected by every male in this galaxy because of her size. But I've worked with her for 2 days, and I can tell you she's the most intelligent person I've ever met. Her terraforming technology could save billions of lives." "Pretty words," Korthok sneered. "But words mean nothing. If you think she is so valuable, prove it. How? Marry her." The chamber fell silent. Every eye turned to Jake as Korthok's challenge hung in the air like a physical weight. "You claim to value this defective princess," Korthok continued. "If that is true, take her as your mate. Form an alliance between your primitive species and the mighty Vorthok Empire." Emperor Vorthok's crystal eyes widened in shock. "Korthok, surely you cannot be serious. No human has ever married into Vorthok royalty." "Exactly my point," Korthok said with a cruel smile. "The human talks about her value. But when faced with the reality of bonding with a genetic failure, he will run like all the others." Jake felt every gaze in the room focused on him. Ambassador Collins grabbed his arm. "Jake, think about what you're doing. A marriage alliance is a lifetime commitment. You barely know her." "I know enough," Jake said quietly. He turned to face Emperor Vorthok. "Your Majesty, I formally request permission to court Princess Sephora for marriage. I believe an alliance between humanity and the Vorthok Empire would benefit both our peoples." The Emperor's crystal face went through several color changes as he processed this unexpected development. "Captain Morrison, you understand what you are proposing? Marriage to a Vorthok princess means accepting our customs, our laws, our way of life. I understand. You would be bound to her for life. There is no divorce in Vorthok culture. I understand that too." Prince Korthok laughed loudly. "This is even better than I hoped. The desperate human will chain himself to a defective mate just to prove a point. How entertaining." "The only defective thing here is your attitude," Jake shot back. Emperor Vorthok raised his hand for silence. "This proposal requires careful consideration. Captain Morrison, I must speak with my daughter first. If she accepts your suit, we will discuss terms." The meeting disbanded in confusion, with alien delegates muttering among themselves as they filed out. Jake found himself alone with his human colleagues, who stared at him like he had lost his mind. "Jake, what are you thinking?" Ambassador Collins demanded. "You can't marry an alien princess just to make a point." "Not making a point," Jake said. "I'm doing what feels right. You've known her for 2 days. Sometimes that's enough." Made his way through the crystal corridors to find Princess Sephora. He discovered her in her laboratory, working frantically on her terraforming equations. She looked up as he entered, her eyes red from crying. "I heard about the meeting," she said quietly. "You do not have to do this. I know Prince Korthok forced you into making that proposal." Jake sat down across from her. "He didn't force me to do anything. I meant what I said. You want to marry me?" Zephyr's voice was barely a whisper. I want to get to know you better. I want to work with you on projects that matter. I want to show the galaxy that size doesn't determine worth. Jake paused. And yes, I think I could fall in love with you. Zephora stared at him. You are serious. Completely serious. But why? You could have any human female. You could find someone your own size, your own species. Why choose me? Jake was quiet for a moment, choosing his words carefully. Because in 2 days you've shown me more intelligence, more courage, and more heart than most people show in a lifetime. Because your ideas could change the galaxy for the better. Because you deserve someone who sees you for who you really are. And who am I really? You're brilliant. You're kind. You're stronger than anyone gives you credit for. You're Princess Zephora of the Vorthok Empire, and you're going to revolutionize terraforming technology. Jake smiled. And if you'll have me, you'll be my wife. Tears began flowing down Zephora's crystal cheeks. No one has ever wanted me before. Not really. They all saw my size and decided I was worthless. I see your size and think about all the places you can go that others can't. All the perspectives you have that others lack. All the problems you can solve in ways no one else would think of. Zephora was quiet for a long time, staring at her hands. Finally, she looked up at Jake. If I say yes, it will cause terrible problems for your people. The other races will mock humanity for accepting a defective princess. Let them mock. The humans have dealt with worse. You could lose trade agreements, military alliances, respect in the galactic community. We'll gain something more valuable. What's that? You? Zephora stood up and walked to the window overlooking the Crystal City. Below them, alien delegates were boarding their ships, preparing to spread news of the human captain's shocking proposal throughout the galaxy. There is something you should know, Zephora said without turning around. My terraforming research is not just theoretical. I have been testing it in secret. It works, Jake. It really works. But my people refuse to use it because they think I am too small to understand such complex science. Then we'll find people who aren't so narrow-minded. The process could transform dead worlds into paradise in decades instead of centuries. It could provide homes for billions of beings across the galaxy. Jake joined her at the window. All the more reason the galaxy needs you. Zephora turned to face him, her crystal eyes reflecting the light of the setting sun. If I marry you, I will be leaving my world forever. Vorthok marriage law requires the female to join her husband's people. Earth would be honored to have you. Promise you will not grow tired of me. That you will not regret choosing someone so different from your own kind. Jake took her small crystal hands in his human ones. I promise that every day with you will be an adventure. I promise to support your work, defend your ideas, and love you for exactly who you are. Zephora closed her eyes, taking a deep breath. When she opened them again, they were filled with determination. Then yes, Jake Morrison of Earth, I will marry you. The news spread across the galaxy within hours. The tiny Vorthok princess, who had been rejected by every male in known space, was going to marry a human. Some species laughed. Others placed bets on how quickly the marriage would fail. But in a small laboratory on the Vorthok homeworld, two beings from different worlds worked, side by side, planning a future that would change everything. The wedding ceremony took place on the neutral space station Aurora 7, floating in the void between 3 star systems. Representatives from dozens of alien species came to watch what many considered the strangest marriage in galactic history, the human captain and the tiny Vorthok. Princess stood together at the altar while cameras broadcast their union across the galaxy. Jake wore his formal Earth Federation uniform, dark blue with silver trim. Zephora's wedding dress was made of living crystal that glowed softly in the station's lights. At 3 feet tall, she barely reached Jake's chest, but her crystal crown caught the light and made her look like a tiny star. Do you really think this will last? Tss, Ambassador Zix whispered to Prince Korthak as they watched from the audience. 2 months at most, Korthak replied with a cruel smile. The human will realize his mistakes soon enough, then we can all have a good laugh. The ceremony proceeded according to both human and Vorthok traditions. Jake and Zephora exchanged vows in 3 languages, promising to love and support each other through whatever challenges lay ahead. When Jake kissed his new wife, the cameras captured the moment for galactic history. Some viewers thought it was sweet, others thought it was ridiculous. "Ladies and gentlemen," the officiant announced, "I present Captain and Princess Morrison." The couple left for their honeymoon aboard a luxury cruise ship that traveled between the outer rim worlds. Jake had booked the finest suite available, complete with a laboratory where Zephora could continue her research. They spent their days working together on terraforming equations and their nights talking about their dreams for the future. "I never thought I would be happy," Zephora confessed. On their 3rd night together, they stood on the observation deck, watching stars drift past the windows. "I always believed I would live alone, rejected by everyone." "You're not alone anymore," Jake said, putting his arm around her small shoulders. "We're a team now." "You think your people will accept me? They'll love you once they get to know you?" "Humans appreciate intelligence and kindness. You have both in abundance." Their peaceful honeymoon ended suddenly on the 5th day. Emergency alarms woke them at 3 in the morning, and the ship's captain's voice echoed through the corridors. "Passengers report to emergency stations immediately. We have critical system failures throughout the ship. Life support is failing. Repeat, life support is failing." Jake and Zephora rushed to the main deck, where hundreds of panicked passengers crowded around emergency stations. The ship's crew worked frantically at control panels, their faces grim with worry. "What's the problem?" Jake asked the chief engineer, a tall alien with green skin and 4 eyes. "Complete failure of the atmospheric recycling system," the engineer replied. "Something has damaged the main processors deep inside the ship's core. We can't reach them to make repairs. The backup systems will only last 6 hours. "How many people are on this ship?" Zephora asked. 4,000 passengers and crew, the engineer said. "If we can't fix this, we'll all suffocate." Jake studied the ship's blueprint on a nearby display screen. The damaged atmospheric processors were located in a narrow maintenance tunnel deep in the ship's center. The tunnel was barely 2 feet wide and filled with dangerous electrical systems. "The tunnel is too small for normal repair crews," the engineer explained. "We would need someone tiny enough to crawl through, but skilled enough to fix complex machinery. No one on this ship fits both requirements." Jake and Zephora looked at each other. They both realized the same thing at the same moment. "I can do it," Zephora said quietly. "Absolutely not," Jake replied immediately. "It's too dangerous. Electrical systems could kill you." "I am the only one small enough to reach the processors," Zephora insisted. "I understand atmospheric recycling technology better than anyone here." The chief engineer stared at the tiny princess. "You know atmospheric systems? I designed new ones for my terraforming research," Zephora explained. "I can fix your processors, but I need someone to guide me through the ship's layout and watch. For electrical hazards, I'll go with you," Jake said. "Cannot fit in the tunnel. Then I'll stay at the entrance and talk you through it step by step." The ship's crew led them to the maintenance access point. The tunnel stretched away into darkness, barely wide enough for Zephora's small frame. Electrical cables lined the walls, sparking occasionally with dangerous energy. "The processors are half a mile down this tunnel," the chief engineer said. "You'll need to replace 3 circuit boards and reboot the main computer. If you make one mistake—" "I understand the risks," Zephora said. She looked up at Jake. "If something happens to me—" "Nothing will happen," Jake said firmly. "I'll be right here talking you through every step." Zephora crawled into the tunnel, carrying a bag of repair tools and a portable light. Jake lay at the tunnel entrance, speaking to her through a communication device. "I'm at the first junction." Zephora's voice crackled through the speaker. "I can see the damaged processors ahead. Be careful of the power coupling on your left," Jake warned, watching the ship's electrical readings on a handheld scanner. It's still carrying live current. For the next 3 hours, Zephora crawled through the dangerous tunnel, placing damaged components and rerouting power systems. Her small size allowed her to reach places that would have been impossible for larger beings. Her knowledge of atmospheric technology helped her understand how to fix systems that the ship's own engineers couldn't repair. "The second circuit board is replaced," Zephyra reported. "But I'm having trouble with the main computer. The reboot sequence isn't working." Jake studied the technical manual on his tablet. "Try bypassing the primary startup protocol. Route the reboot command through the secondary processor that's not in the manual. Trust me. It's a trick we use on Earth ships." Zephyra followed his instructions, and suddenly the tunnel filled with the hum of working machinery. Fresh air began flowing through the ship's ventilation system. "It's working!" the chief engineer shouted with joy. "Atmospheric systems are back. Online, we're saved." Zephyra crawled back through the tunnel, exhausted but triumphant. When she emerged, Jake pulled her into his arms, not caring that she was covered in grease and dust. "You saved 4,000 lives," he whispered in her ear. "Saved them," Zephyra corrected. "I could not have done it without your guidance." The news of their heroic actions spread quickly through the ship and then across the galaxy. The tiny princess who had been rejected by every alien male had just saved thousands of lives. The human captain who had married her had proven that. Their partnership was more than just politics, but not everyone was impressed. In the ship's main lounge, Prince Korthok watched the celebration with angry eyes. "Lucky accident," he told his companions. "Anyone could have crawled through that." "Tunnel, could you have fixed those processors?" asked Ambassador Zix. Korthok was silent. The real test came 2 weeks later. When emergency broadcasts reached every corner of the galaxy, the devastator swarm had appeared in the outer rim, consuming entire planets in their path. These insect-like creatures had destroyed civilizations before, and every military force that faced them had been defeated. "They're heading for the core worlds," Jake said, reading the reports in their hotel room on Aurora 7. "Billions of people are in danger." Zephyra studied the tactical data on her tablet. "The swarm consumes organic matter and breathable atmospheres. But what if we could make planets uninhabitable to them?" "How?" "My terraforming technology works both ways. Instead of making dead worlds livable, we could make living worlds temporarily dead. Change the atmospheric composition so the swarm cannot survive." Jake stared at her. "That's brilliant. But could it work fast enough?" "If we can get close enough to the planets they're targeting, yes. The process would take hours instead of years. Then, we need to contact Earth Command immediately." Within days, Jake and Zephyra were aboard a human battleship racing toward the outer rim. The galaxy's greatest military minds had failed to stop the swarm. But a tiny alien princess and her human husband had a plan that just might work. The real battle was about to begin. The human battleship Defender raced through space toward the planet Kepler Prime, where the devastator swarm had just landed. In the ship's laboratory, Princess Zephyra worked frantically at her terraforming equipment, while Jake coordinated with the fleet commanders. "How long before the atmospheric change takes effect?" Admiral Hayes asked, watching Zephyra's small hands dance over the control panels. 30 minutes after we deploy the atmospheric processors," Zephyra replied without looking up. "But I need to be within 50,000 kilometers of the planet's surface to make it work." "That puts us right in the middle of the swarm," Jake said, studying the tactical displays. "Their bioships will try to stop us." "Let them try," Admiral Hayes said grimly. "We've got nothing to lose. Every other weapon has failed against these things." The first test came at Kepler Prime, a farming world with 12 million inhabitants. The devastator swarm had landed 3 days earlier and was already consuming the planet's crops and atmosphere. From space, the world looked like it was covered in moving black spots where the insect creatures devoured everything in their path. "Beginning atmospheric modification," Zephyra announced as the Defender moved into position. Her equipment sent invisible waves toward the planet's surface, carrying specially designed bacteria that would rapidly change the air composition. "Swarm bioships are moving to intercept," the weapons officer reported. 20 vessels each, the size of a small moon. "All ships, engage the enemy," Admiral Hayes ordered. "Keep them away from the science vessel." The battle was fierce but brief. Human ships used their superior speed and tactics to dance around the slower swarm vessels, while Zephyra completed her work. As the atmospheric processors did their job, something amazing happened. The black spots on Kepler Prime's surface began to shrink. The devastator insects, unable to breathe the modified atmosphere, retreated to their ships. Within an hour, the entire swarm had lifted off and fled to space. It worked, Jake said in amazement, watching the tactical display. Can't survive in the modified atmosphere. Process is reversible, Zephyra explained as she shut down her equipment. In 6 months, the atmosphere will return to normal, and the colonists can come home. News of the victory spread through the galaxy like wildfire. The tiny princess who had been rejected by every alien male had found a way to defeat the unstoppable swarm. Planets that had been evacuated in panic began to hope again, but success came with a terrible price. The second battle took place at New Tokyo, a heavily populated industrial world. This time, the swarm was ready for them. They had learned from Kepler Prime and brought more bioships. To protect their ground forces, I need more power for the atmospheric processors, Zephyra said, as enemy fire shook the defender. The planet is larger, and the process is taking longer. Jake watched his wife work, noting the strain on her crystal. Features. Her normally pale skin was flickering with rapid light patterns, a sign of dangerous overload in Vorthok physiology. Zephyra, you need to rest, he said. You've been working for 18 hours straight. Cannot rest, she replied, her voice tight with concentration. 50 million people live on this world. If I stop now, they all die. The atmospheric modification succeeded, but barely. The swarm retreated again, but Zephyra collapsed at her control station. Jake caught her as she fell, feeling how hot her crystal skin had become. Medical team to the laboratory, Jake called over the CUM system. Dr. Martinez. The ship's chief medical officer ran scanners over Zephyra's unconscious form. His face was grim as he read the results. Her neural pathways are overloaded, he told Jake. The terraforming process requires incredible mental calculations. Her brain is literally burning itself out from the effort. Can you help her? I can give her stimulants to keep her conscious, but each use of the terraforming system is damaging her permanently. If she keeps this up, she'll die. Jake stared down at his wife's peaceful face. The woman who had been considered too small in Week 2 matter was killing herself to save the galaxy. The third battle came sooner than expected. The swarm attacked 3 worlds simultaneously, forcing the human fleet to split up. Zephyra insisted on continuing despite the doctor's warnings. We have to stop them, she said weakly, as Jake helped her to the laboratory. Every world they take means billions of dead. It's not at the cost of your life, Jake replied. My life doesn't matter if I can save others. It matters to me. The battle at Arcturus colony was the hardest yet. The planet was covered in vast cities, making the atmospheric modification extremely complex. Zephyra worked for 6 hours straight, her crystal skin growing dimmer with each passing minute. Jake, she whispered as the process neared completion. I can't see the displays anymore. You have to guide me through the final sequence. Jake took her hands and helped her operate the controls, his eyes serving as hers. Together, they completed the atmospheric change just as Zephyra's consciousness faded completely. This time, she didn't wake up for 3 days. When Zephyra finally opened her eyes, she found Jake sitting beside her bed in the medical bay. His face was haggard with worry and lack of sleep. How many worlds did we save? She asked weakly. 7 so far, Jake replied. But that's enough. You're not doing this anymore. I have to. I'm the only one who can operate the terraforming technology. Then, we'll find another way. There is no other way, Zephyra protested, trying to sit up. The calculations are too complex for anyone else to understand. What if we taught others? Impossible. The mathematical concepts take years to master, and the neural interface requires my specific brain patterns. Jake was quiet for a long moment. What if we didn't teach them the whole process? What if we broke it down into smaller parts that different people could handle? I don't understand. On Earth, we build complex things by having many people work. On small pieces, no one person understands everything, but together they create something amazing. Zephora considered this. You mean divide the terraforming process into steps that different specialists could handle? Exactly. You design the overall plan, but others execute the individual components. That might work, Zephora said slowly. But it would require people from different species working together. The math for atmospheric chemistry, the biology for bacterial design, the engineering for equipment operation. Sounds like a job for the Galactic Council. The emergency session of the Galactic Council was unlike any in history. Representatives from dozens of species gathered to hear Jake and Zephora's proposal for a collaborative defense against the swarm. You want us to work together? Prince Korthok asked with disdain. The Draconian Empire does not share its military secrets with inferior species. Then the Draconian Empire can defend itself when the swarm comes for your worlds, Jake replied coldly. The human makes a valid point, Ambassador Zik said, his robotic voice unusually thoughtful. Individual species have failed against the swarm. Perhaps cooperation is necessary. The cerebroids have excellent mathematicians, Zephora added weakly from her medical chair. The Aquatic Federation understands biological systems better than anyone. The Tech Empire builds the finest equipment in the galaxy. Together, we could create a defense network that no single species could manage alone. And what do humans contribute to this alliance? Lord Aquarius asked. Jake smiled. We contribute the idea that it's possible in the first place, and we contribute her. He gestured to Zephora, as a person who figured out how to stop the unstoppable. The debate continued for hours, but eventually, practical concerns won over pride. The swarm was getting closer to the core worlds with each passing day. Traditional weapons had failed completely. Working together was the only option left. Well, Emperor Vorthok said finally, the Crystalline Empire agrees to this collaboration. One by one, the other species agreed. Even Prince Korthok, faced with the destruction of his homeworld, grudgingly consented to work with inferior species. But as the meeting ended and plans were made for the new alliance, Dr. Martinez pulled Jake aside with troubling news. Neural damage is permanent, he said quietly. Even if she never uses the terraforming system again, Princess Zephora has maybe 6 months to live. Jake felt his world collapse around him. They had found a way to save the galaxy, but the cost was going to be his wife's life? Does she know? Not yet. I thought you should hear it first. Jake looked across the council chamber at Zephora, who was excitedly discussing plans with alien scientists who had never paid attention to her before. For the first time in her life, she was being treated as an equal by the galaxy's greatest minds. He couldn't bring himself to tell her she was dying. The Galactic Defense Command Center buzzed with activity as beings from 12 different species worked side by side for the first time in history. Jake Morrison stood at the central command platform, watching alien scientists and engineers collaborate on Princess Zephora's revolutionary defense system, but his mind was not on the technical discussions. 3 days had passed since Dr. Martinez told him about Zephora's condition. 3 days of watching his wife grow weaker while she threw herself into organizing the galaxy's defense. She still didn't know she was dying. Hey. Jake, we have a problem, Admiral Hayes said, approaching with a worried expression. The swarm has changed tactics. They're sending advanced scouts to study our atmospheric modification technique. They're learning to adapt. How long before they figure out how to counter it? Maybe a week. Then we're back to square one. Jake felt despair creeping into his chest. They had bought time, but not enough. The galaxy needed a permanent solution, and Zephora was the only one brilliant enough to create it. But using her abilities again would certainly kill her. There has to be another way, Jake muttered. Captain Morrison, a small voice called from behind him. Jake turned to see someone he had never expected. It was a chromatic warrior, but unlike the giants Jake had met before, this one stood only 4 feet tall. His muscular frame was compact, and his skin bore scars from many battles. I am Commander Thek, the small warrior said. Heard about your wife's situation? I want to help. Help how? I was born smaller than other chromatic warriors. My people considered me defective, unfit for battle, but my size gave me advantages in stealth and speed that larger warriors lacked. I became the most successful scout in our military, but they still treated me as a failure. Jake studied the scarred warrior. What's your point? My point is that your wife is not the only defective being in the galaxy. There are others like us, others who have been rejected for not fitting the normal patterns of our species. As if summoned by his words, more unusual beings approached the command platform. Jake saw a pale cerebroid with white skin instead of the typical blue, a tiny aquatic with delicate fins rather than the massive ones her people prized. And an elderly tech empire robot whose outdated design made him an outcast among his kind. We heard about the alliance, the pale cerebroid said. We want to join the fight. We understand what it means to be rejected, added the small aquatic. Princess Zephyra gave us hope that being different doesn't mean being worthless. Jake felt something stirring in his chest. An idea was forming, something that might save both his wife and the galaxy. Zephyra, he called to his wife, who was working at a nearby console. Come here, I want you to meet some people.
What?
Slowly, her crystal skin, dimmer than usual, as she listened to the stories of the gathered outcasts, her eyes began to brighten with understanding. You all have unique perspectives because of your differences, she said thoughtfully. Commander Thek, your small size gives you tactical advantages. Scholar Vex, your pale coloring affects how you process light, which changes how you think about energy systems. Exactly, Jake said. What if we applied your collaborative approach not just to species but to individuals? What if the galaxies? Rejected and different people work together on this problem. But I am the only one who understands the complete terraforming mathematics, Zephyra protested. Are you? Jake asked. Or are you the only one who's been allowed to learn them? Over the next day, something remarkable happened. As word spread through the galaxy's communication networks, more unusual beings began arriving at the Defense Command Center. There was a giant among the normally small Neptunians, a silent member of the chattering insectoid species, and dozens of others who had been cast aside by their societies. Zephyra began teaching them simplified versions of her terraforming equations. To everyone's amazement, many of the outcasts grasped concepts that had baffled traditional scientists for years. The giant Neptunian sees patterns in fluid dynamics that smaller members of his species miss, Zephyra explained to Jake. The silent insectoid can focus on mathematical relationships without the distractions that affect his chattering relatives. And the pale cerebroid? Jake asked. Her different brain chemistry allows her to process energy calculations in ways that normal cerebroids cannot. She solved a problem in 3 hours that took me 3 months. But the real breakthrough came from an unexpected source. A young human named Danny Cooper had arrived on the station claiming to have relevant skills. Like the impressive alien outcasts, Danny seemed completely ordinary. He was a maintenance worker from a small Earth colony with no advanced education or special abilities. I fix air recycling systems on mining ships, Danny explained nervously when Jake interviewed him. I heard about the atmospheric modification technology and thought maybe I could help. How could fixing air recyclers help us fight the swarm? Jake asked, trying to be polite. Well, air recycling is just atmospheric management on a small scale, Danny said. I've been thinking about your wife's equations, and I think there's a simpler way to do some of the calculations. Jake was skeptical, but Zephyra insisted on hearing Danny's ideas. Within an hour, the young maintenance worker had suggested modifications that made the terraforming process 50% more efficient. How? Did you see that? Zephyra asked in amazement. Danny shrugged. I fix broken air systems every day. You learn to find simple solutions to complex problems, or people suffocate. As the diverse team worked together, they created something unprecedented. Instead of relying on one brilliant mind, they built a network of different perspectives and abilities. The small, chromatic-designed infiltration tactics. The pale, cerebroid calculated energy requirements. The giant Neptunian modeled atmospheric flows. Danny simplified the technical operations. Most importantly, they developed a way to implement the defense system without requiring Zephyra to risk her life. The calculations can be distributed across multiple operators, Scholar Vex explained. To the Galactic Council, No single person needs to bear the entire mental load. Impossible, Prince Korthok declared. The process requires geniusly vile intelligence. It requires different kinds of intelligence working together, Jake corrected. Something your people have never tried. The final test came when the Devastator swarm launched their largest attack yet, targeting the core world of Centauri Prime with over 1,000 bioships. The new alliance of outcasts and misfits coordinated their defense from stations scattered across the system. Zephora served as the central coordinator. But instead of doing all the calculations herself, she guided her team of unusual specialists. Through their individual tasks, the strain was manageable because the mental load was shared. The atmospheric modification succeeded brilliantly. Not only did they drive off the swarm, but they did it so efficiently that the insects appeared to give up entirely, retreating to the furthest edges of known space. 6 months later, Jake and Zephora stood in their new laboratory on Earth, working together on peaceful terraforming projects. Zephyra's health had stabilized once she stopped overloading her neural pathways. The distributed approach had saved both her life and the galaxy. The Galactic Diversity Council met monthly now, ensuring that no being was dismissed because of physical differences. Commander Vec led a special forces unit of small warriors. Scholar Vex headed the new Collaborative Science Institute. Danny Cooper became the director of Practical Engineering Solutions, proving that genius could come from the most unexpected places. "Do you ever regret it?" Zephora asked Jake one evening as they watched Earth's sunset through their laboratory windows. "Choosing someone so different from your own kind?" Jake pulled his wife close and smiled. "I didn't choose you despite your differences. I chose you because of them. That's what makes us human." "What do you mean?" "Humans have always been good at one thing above all others. We see potential where others see problems. We find strength in diversity. We believe that everyone has value no matter how different they might be." Zephora leaned against her husband's shoulder. "That belief changed the galaxy." "No," Jake said, kissing the top of her crystal head. "You changed the galaxy. I just helped the galaxy see what was already there." Outside their window ships, from dozens of different species, traveled peacefully through Earth's sky. Each carried crews of mixed aliens working together, their differences seen as advantages rather than flaws. The galaxy had learned that true strength came not from uniformity, but from the beautiful diversity of minds, working toward common goals. And in a small laboratory on a small planet, a human man and his alien wife continued their work, proving every day that love could transcend any difference and that the smallest person could cast the longest shadow.